Just a real quick tip about logic games. New technique that I'm really excited about. I've been doing it all the time on games in the last 6 months or so. It's crazy that I can be an LSAT teacher for 10 years and still discover new things about the test, but check this out. I've got a rule up on the board that says if P's before Q, then P has to be before R. And the old school LSAT nerd way to deal with this rule is that you write the rule with an if-then statement and then you do the contrapositive, right? So the contrapositive is, get a pen that works. The contrapositive is if not P before R, then not P before Q. Like that, and this is technically correct. If the rule is if P before Q, then P has to be before R, contrapositive, if not P before R, then not P before Q. Technically correct. Also not useful as far as working toward a solution to the actual puzzle, which is what we're supposed to be trying to do in the first place. So I wanted to show you an entirely different way of dealing with this rule that doesn't even have this conditional in it at all. So consider, what if instead of writing the conditional, what if I never even wrote the conditional? What if instead I just made two worlds? Now, to be clear what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a world where the sufficient condition is true, and then I'm going to make a world where the sufficient condition is false. So the sufficient condition on this rule is P before Q. So what if I make a world where P before Q, and then what if I make a world where Q before P? Okay, so that's a world where the sufficient condition is true, P before Q, and a world where the sufficient condition is false, which would just be Q before P. Now, I'm allowed to do this because all possible solutions are going to have either P before Q or Q before P. There can't be any other way. I mean, we're assuming that this is just a very basic sequencing game, putting things in order, and that there's no ties or anything like that. So all solutions are going to start with either P before Q or Q before P. If you're with me that far, well, in the world where P is before Q, that triggers this rule, right? If the sufficient condition is true, then you're going to have to apply the necessary P before R. Okay, so when P is before Q, then P is before R. And in this world, when Q is before P, see, the sufficient condition can't be true. This rule only gets triggered when P is before Q. When P is before Q, it forces P to be before R. But the rule is only triggered when P is before Q. So in the world where Q is before P, this rule doesn't matter. So this is one way of dealing with it. You write the rule as a conditional, and then you write the whole contrapositive, and then you kind of just, oh my God, start pulling your hair out because you're not really working toward a solution. But another approach is to make a world where the sufficient condition is true and apply the necessary. When P is before Q, P also has to be before R. And then make another world where Q is before P, where this rule drops out of existence. And the point I really want to make is that I never even had to write this in the first place. Because this two worlds approach contains 100% of the same information. In the world where P is before Q, P has to be before R. And in the world where Q is before P, the rule is irrelevant because the rule only matters when P is before Q. So not only have I eliminated a really frustrating pain-in-the-ass rule, but I've also gotten started on a two worlds approach, and I love making worlds because worlds crush logic games. So this is the technique of using a conditional rule to make two worlds. A world where the sufficient condition is true and a world where the sufficient condition is false. Give it a shot. I think you'll kill some logic games.